For years, I held on to a belief that almost cost me the love of my life. I was a proud lesbian who had an unspoken rule. I would never date a bisexual woman. The fear of being left for a man, the internalized biphobia I didn't even recognize in myself, the need to feel safe in my queerness, all of it built walls around my heart. Then I met Sofia at a friend's art gallery opening, and everything I thought I knew about love, identity, and what it means to truly accept someone shattered in the most beautiful way possible. This is the story of how I learned that love doesn't fit into the boxes we create, and how opening my heart changed everything. I came out when I was 19, and it wasn't easy. My family struggled with it, friends disappeared, and I had to rebuild my entire life around this truth I could no longer hide. The lesbian community became my sanctuary, my safe haven where I finally felt seen and understood. But somewhere along the way, I absorbed ideas I'm not proud of today. I remember sitting in coffee shops with other lesbian friends, and the conversation would inevitably turn to dating. Someone would mention a woman they were interested in, and then the question would come, is she a lesbian? Or the or always hung in the air with a certain weight, a certain judgment. If the answer was bisexual, there would be knowing looks, warnings, stories of bisexual women who left for men, who were just experimenting, who couldn't be trusted. I internalized all of it. I told myself it was about protecting my heart, about wanting someone who understood the lesbian experience, who wouldn't have one foot in straight privilege. But really it was fear. Fear that I wouldn't be enough. Fear that my love would be a stopover on someone's journey to a more acceptable life. Fear that validated itself as a boundary, as a preference, as anything but what it actually was. Prejudice. My dating profile was explicit, lesbians only. I swiped left on any woman whose profile mentioned being bi or queer without further specification. I constructed an entire fortress around my heart, brick by brick, built from other people's stories and my own insecurities. And for a while, I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was being smart, protecting myself, honoring my identity. Looking back now, I see how much I was limiting myself, how much beauty, connection, and love I was refusing to even consider. But at the time, I was convinced, absolutely certain that my rules were keeping me safe. The art gallery was crowded that Thursday evening, filled with the usual mix of pretentious collectors and genuine art lovers. My friend Marcus had finally gotten his photography exhibited, and I promised to be there. I was nursing a glass of cheap wine, studying a series of black and white portraits when I heard her voice. The way he captures vulnerability is devastating, isn't it? I turned and there she was. Dark curly hair falling past her shoulders, wearing a vintage leather jacket over a flowing dress, eyes that seemed to hold entire galaxies. Sofia, though I didn't know her name yet. We started talking, and it was effortless. She had this way of listening that made you feel like the only person in the room, and when she spoke, her words were thoughtful, layered with meaning. We talked about art, about the gentrification of our neighborhood, about our favorite books, and the best place to get tacos at 2 a.m. Hours disappeared. Can I get your number? She asked as the gallery was closing, and I said yes without hesitation. We texted constantly over the next few days. Long conversations that stretched into the early morning hours. She was brilliant, funny, kind. We went on our first official date to a small Italian restaurant in the West Village, and I remember thinking, this is what everyone talks about. This spark, this connection, this feeling of coming home to someone you've just met by our third date. I was falling, hard, and then during a dinner at her apartment, surrounded by plants and bookshelves and the warm glow of string lights. She mentioned it casually while talking about her past relationships. Yeah, I identify as bisexual. I've dated people across the gender spectrum. My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. Everything inside me froze. All those old rules, those walls I'd built, came crashing back into my consciousness. I could feel my defenses rising, that familiar fear creeping in. But I looked at her, really looked at her sitting across from me, vulnerable and open and more real than anyone I'd met in years. And something in me whispered, "Don't run from this." I didn't run, but I didn't exactly stay present either. I finished dinner, kissed Sofia goodnight, and spent the entire walk home spiraling. My mind raced with every warning I'd ever heard, every story of heartbreak, every reason this wouldn't work. I called my best friend Rachel at midnight. "She's bisexual," I said, as if that explained everything. "Okay," Rachel said slowly. And? Rachel, you know how I feel about this. What if she leaves me for a man? What if this is just a phase for her? What if you're about to sabotage something beautiful because of your own baggage? Rachel interrupted. "Look, I love you, but you need to hear this. What you're doing is biphobia. You're making assumptions about who Sofia is based on her sexuality, not on her actual character or how she treats you." The word hit me like cold water, biphobia. I wanted to argue, to defend myself, but Rachel continued. "You've spent weeks talking about how amazing this woman is, how connected you feel, how she makes you laugh and think and feel seen. And now you're ready to throw all that away because of what? Because theoretically she could leave you for a man? Babe, she could leave you for another woman too. Or you could leave her. That's the risk of any relationship." I sat with that for a long time after we hung up. I thought about all the times I'd felt judged or misunderstood because of my sexuality. How much it hurt when people made assumptions about who I was based on one aspect of my identity. And here I was, doing the exact same thing to Sofia. I started actually reading about bisexuality and biphobia in queer communities. I learned about bi-erasure, about the discrimination bisexual people face from both straight and gay communities, about the harmful stereotypes I'd been perpetuating. I learned that bisexual people in same-sex relationships are just as committed, just as queer, just as valid as anyone else. More importantly, I thought about Sofia, not as a bisexual woman, but as Sofia, the woman who sent me photos of street art she found on her morning runs, who left sticky notes with poetry quotes in my jacket pocket, who looked at me like I was magic. I realized my fear wasn't really about her sexuality. It was about my own worthiness, about whether I could be enough, whether my love could be enough to make someone stay. And that was my work to do, not her burden to carry. I asked Sofia to meet me at Prospect Park, at this little bench overlooking the lake where we'd had our second date. My hands were shaking as she sat down beside me. "I need to be honest with you about something," I started. "When you told me you were bisexual, I panicked. I have had this rule that I wouldn't date bi women, and I need to tell you that was wrong. That came from my own fears and prejudices, and I'm sorry." Sofia was quiet, her expression unreadable. I pressed on. "I've spent the last week doing a lot of reflection and learning. And what I realized is that I was so focused on protecting myself from imaginary future pain that I almost missed out on real present love. You're incredible, Sofia, not despite your bisexuality, but as your complete whole self. And I want to be with you. If you'll still have me." She took my hand, and there were tears in her eyes. "Do you know how many times I've had this conversation? How exhausting it is to constantly prove that I'm queer enough, that I can be trusted, that my love is real? I've been left by lesbians who decided they couldn't handle dating a bi woman, who made me feel like I was tainted somehow." My heart broke hearing the pain in her voice. "But," she continued, squeezing my hand, "what you just did, the self-reflection, the honesty, the willingness to confront your own biases, that matters. That's the person I've gotten to know these past weeks. Someone thoughtful and open and brave enough to grow. We talked for hours that afternoon. She shared her experiences of biphobia, the microaggressions, the way she'd been fetishized or dismissed. I listened, really listened, and I felt ashamed of the ways it contributed to that culture. Even passively, we decided to move forward together, but with eyes open. I committed to continuing to examine my biases, to learning, to being an ally, not just in theory, but in practice. Sophia committed to being patient with me as I unlearned harmful patterns, while also holding me accountable. That was 2 years ago. Today, Sophia and I share an apartment filled with both our books, both our plants, both our dreams. We've built a love that's stronger than my old fears, deeper than any label. Opening my heart to dating bisexual women didn't just bring me Sophia, it made me a better person. It taught me that love isn't about finding someone who fits perfectly into the boxes we create, but about dismantling those boxes entirely. My relationship with Sophia is the most authentic, passionate, secure love I've ever known. And I almost missed it because of unfounded fears. If you're someone who's held similar beliefs, I encourage you to examine where they come from. Read bisexual voices. Listen to their experiences. Recognize that biphobia exists in queer communities and commit to doing better. Love is too precious to limit with prejudice. Your turn. Have you ever had to confront your own biases in dating or relationships? Share your story in the comments below. Let's create space for honest conversations about growth, love, and acceptance within our community.